Family, this is your old school traveler. I'm back from Asheville, North Carolina. Now, I went to Asheville and I was on my way to Biltmore, to the mansion to see Biltmore. I have no clue what the hell I was doing going to see Biltmore anyway. But during my travels, I like to see things I don't normally see and see things I've heard about. And it's an attraction. But I stayed 4 days in Asheville, North Carolina. Asheville, I'm kind of telling you this because I went right after the hurricane, and I stayed in Asheville. Now, I had been there before, probably about 10 years ago. So I really think the hurricane might have improved Asheville a little bit, because now they got to rebuild some parts that they should have rebuilt anyway. Now, I don't wish nobody bad luck. I would say that, and that's just not me. But I went to Asheville, and here's the thing with Asheville. Asheville wants to be a Nashville. Yep, they want to be Nashville. They're not. It's something about these cities who got names, Ville, and want to be something that they're not. Asheville wants to be like Nashville. And, so I stayed there. And Asheville got a lot of bars, lots of bars. For a town that size, they got a lot of bars. But, when you go to that part of North Carolina, the Great Smoky Mountains, I went there for, I went to visit the National Park, which is the biggest and most visited national park in America. But I went to Asheville, and I just wasn't impressed. Because, it seems like everything happens after the sun goes down. People get off from work, happy hour. But it's not a bad looking city, but it's not a great looking city either. There's nothing around Asheville. There's nothing around it. Nope. You got the University of North Carolina at Asheville, but there's nothing around Asheville. So there's no competition for the bar scene. It's the only city in that part of the state for miles. It's the only city in that part of the state for miles. I'm talking about like hundreds of miles. There's nothing else there. There's nothing to do there. There's nothing to do there at all. You're gonna be bored within the first night. Now, if you want to just go and see how much you can drink every night, then Asheville is the city for you. But other than that, it's not the city for you, though. No, there's nothing to do. It's a border city. And Asheville is not a very diverse city either. But you don't expect that. But Asheville is about the size of Mobile, Alabama. And Mobile got more things to do. You got the bay, you got the Dolphin Island, you got the beach. Asheville ain't got nothing. Nothing at all. So if you go there, don't be surprised. I don't know what families do, but they got nice parks. They got nice parks. But if you like the outdoors, I did like the outdoors. You can walk forever in the woods and other stuff. You might get eaten by a bear, or you might run into somebody who's lost, but and then that's about it. There is no major industry there. I don't know where everyone works at. I don't know. But it's not like Asheville got a lot of jobs being generated. And since the hurricane came through, I don't think many jobs or many companies is going to relocate to Asheville. No. It's pretty much a redneck cowboy town. That's all I can make of it. You got bars. They try to have restaurants where they like a foodie city. No, they're not that. If you go to a restaurant and they got the name bar in the name of the restaurant or the name of the establishment, that's not good. That's not good. Good restaurants don't put the word bar in them. They just don't. Now, they may let everyone knows that almost every restaurant got drinks, alcoholic drinks. Everybody knows that. And so that's the thing of Asheville, is that you go there, it's a good town to go there en route to something else. En route to something else is a good town to stop by for a day or two. Matter of fact, 2 days is too many. It reminds me of Charleston, South Carolina. Yeah, it reminds me of that a lot. With Charleston, there's just, nothing to do, because I'm not into seeing old slave quarters and ghost towns at night. At night, let the ghosts have the town, but I'm not going to be in it. And Asheville kind of reminds me of that a lot. It wants to be something it's not. It definitely wants to be something it's not. Now, the old country boys, they see people of different colors and they ain't the friendliest in the world. Now, don't get me wrong, they're not going to bother you, but you don't know that. And that makes you be guarded on a lot of different things. Yeah, you're not going to know that. But saying that, it's easy to get around Asheville. And believe it or not, people say, well, Asheville got traffic. They got traffic because most of the roads are 2 lanes each way. I-40 goes through Asheville, and you're going to have traffic on I-40 because they're rebuilding it, and it was never really built correctly the first time anyway. A lot of cities are like that, where the interstates got, they just wasn't built right. The interchanges, sucks. But if you go into Tennessee, Pigeon Forge, or one of those little towns over there, they're dumps too. People love them because they are definitely family friendly. But Asheville itself is just not that kind of town. Asheville is not that kind of town. Now, I do like the fact that restaurants open early. But here's the thing. If it's just a restaurant, it's going to close early. Now, if you like Southern food, barbecue, everything, most stuff fried, yeah, it's a good town for that. It's a very good town. I do like the fact that you got mountain views from a lot of different places. I do like that. And, and Asheville, I just don't think you can make it unless you come from old money. There's no way. If you don't come from old money, you're just not going to make it in Asheville. Now, people like to say it's a vibrant city. Yeah, downtown is flooded with college kids at night. It's flooded because they're going to all the bars, and they have a lot of breweries. Not a lot, not like the West Coast, but for a city that size, they hold their own weight, and they drink their own weight every single night. And you got some nice areas, but I'm not into plantation houses. It's just not me. And a lot of houses out in the suburbs of Asheville looks like that. It just looks that way. But there's just, when the sun goes down, and I said, if I don't want to get drunk, what can I do? They got one store or one mall, that's worth visiting. But like I said, it just if you got an education, why would you stay? Why would you stay? It's got all these typical chain foods and stuff, and it doesn't have an overabundance of them. They have a lot of mom and pop restaurants that were good. The ones I went to were very, very good. Now there's some I didn't go to because it just didn't give you that. When I go to a restaurant, I like to go and people say, hey, we're glad you came. Come on in. Sit down, have a drink. You sit down, get a bite to eat. I like those kind of restaurants. You feel like you want it and your business is needed. There were some in Asheville, I didn't get that vibe. It's almost like, yeah, I got a restaurant. Why the hell are you here? Well, because you got a restaurant and I want to eat. They kind of go hand in hand a little bit. Yeah, Asheville was that kind of town that gave you that vibe, But young people, a lot of them like Asheville, especially the students. They like Asheville, but they love it so much that when they graduate, when they get their degree or whatever, they get the hell out of Asheville. They go somewhere else where they can make it at. Now, Asheville is trying to get a theme like Nashville where, they got bars, they got live music. They got a lot of live music. It ain't like Austin, but they have a lot of live music. And people in Asheville, they go out and support the local bands, and I guess at some point you're going to have people who are going to be stars somewhere. I don't know where, but, they think they're going to go from Asheville to Nashville. I guess is what they all feel. Because you got people who think that, they're really good. And I went walking down a couple of streets, I heard some of the bands outside. I'm like, oh yeah, you go another heartbreaker. Yeah, and maybe I'm just a dream killer versus a dream builder. That could be it. But like I said, the first night, second night, and third night, I kind of felt like I was getting good value for the money. And drinks are fairly cheap. You can get a cocktail or something for like $9-10. Drinks are cheap. And then they got, now one thing about Asheville I do like, they got antique stores. They do like antique stores, and I really appreciated that because there are things that you're going to find in some of the antique stores that you won't find nowhere else. But it seemed like it was just overpriced. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I want to buy these gloves and they're like $40. And I'm thinking I can go to the discount store, where I live at, and get them for like $20. And maybe because it doesn't get cold or gloves aren't necessary, I don't know. But a few things, in the antique stores, they call them consignment shops or whatever you want to call them. And then they have pottery and stuff that people make by hand. People, you overrating and you overcharging for your time. Because see, nowadays it's really hard to tell handcraft items from China. It's hard to tell. The Chinese are, they can see what you're doing and they're copying it damn near as good as you are. And they're doing it in, about 2 minutes on a machine. You're doing it in about 2 days or 2 months, because it's hand done. And yet, you got to ask yourself, if I buy this, will my friends notice that it's handmade? Hell no. None of my friends, hell no. They're going to say, oh, what part of China it came from? That might be the most intelligent question you get. And nobody knows what part of China anything comes from. We just know it's all Chinese made. But Asheville hope to be that city. They really hope to be the next Nashville. They are hoping. And are they there yet? Hell no. Do I think they can get there? I do, if they had better surroundings. And what I mean by that, other cities in the area that, that could support Asheville, a large suburb where all the money lives. Yeah. I mean, if you got money, yeah, you can make it. If you ain't got no money, you can't make it. It is what it is. So some people feel that Asheville is going to get there. Now, one thing about North Carolina, they build a lot of damn interstates. I mean, they got interstates going nowhere, but they build them. So Asheville is easy to get to. What I mean that they got a couple of interstates that go straight to Asheville. Now none of them end in Asheville, I don't think, but they got interstates that they got interstates that'll get you into Asheville. More importantly, they got interstates that'll get your ass out of Asheville too, because by the second day, you're ready to go. You're ready to go. Hotels are cheap, as long as it's not like back to school week or something like that, because then, everybody, hotels, the price goes ways up. I mean, go way up. So saying all that, would I visit Asheville again? Yeah, if I'm going through to somewhere else. But would I go to Asheville and make it my hub city, like a New York or a Philadelphia? Hell no. No. Did I enjoy the food I had there? I did at the places I went to, but I had one place I wasn't a fan of, because, they had the menu and everything I wanted, they were out. And I said, now I know that trucks can get in here and bring food because they're doing it for the other people. And to me, that's just a piss poor run restaurant. If you run out of things on your menu, just make your menu digital now. Make it digital and like a gas station where they can change the prices in seconds. If you don't have it, take it off the menu. But if you give me a menu, I think you got it. And sometimes you never know if they have it and people just don't know they have it. So, just do that. Go to a digital menu. Now, it's like I told you earlier, but I'm gonna say it. It's not diverse. It's definitely a good old redneck drinking town. Yeah. You can go in and get drunk every damn day. Just a good old drinking town. It ain't nothing else. Food's decent, not great. And they don't pride themselves on their barbecue. And I thought the companies I went to, the barbecue was very, very good. But you don't see them, boasting and bragging about their barbecue. They boast and brag about how many bars they got. Oh yeah, they love their bars. So they brag about that a lot. Come to Asheville, get drunk. Stay a couple of days. You're gonna need that in order to sober up. So if you go to Asheville and you want to just party 3 or 4 days, it's a town to go to. But if you're over 40, you're gonna have a problem, because 40-year-olds should not be partying with 20-year-olds who's probably drinking illegally. But the bartenders and stuff, at no point did I see them check any IDs. And I went to a bar during happy hour. Man, the city lights up during happy hour. It's one of those cities, I don't know where they all come from, but it seemed like it's more people in the bars than it is in school. Yeah. So, but it seemed like it's this town where if you're not involved with the school, it seemed like it's a town that I don't know how you're gonna make it, because everybody knows retail don't pay bills. If you work in retail, they don't pay bills unless you're the manager, and then they're barely paying your personal bills. Like your rent, your gas, your food, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't ever want to go to a city where the biggest industry is the hospitality industry. That means you got a lot of people who ain't doing good. Now, they may be doing good by their grandmother and mother and father standards back in the day, but they ain't doing good based on my 60 years of living and knowing how doing good is. They're not doing good. And I guess the alternative is to work in Dolly World or Dollywood or whatever you want to call it, Pigeon Forge and all those kind of little towns. I guess that's the alternative. But you got to cut through the mountains to get there. That costs gas and time, But the people, like I said, they don't bother you. You just don't know it, because you be thinking, the guy with 2 first names, like Billy Bob. You be thinking, I don't know what's going to trigger him. It could be a lot of different things, but he looking like something's going to trigger him real quick. So let me get the hell out of here. So Asheville is one of those towns that North Carolina needs to invest more money in. They spend a lot of money on Raleigh, Charlotte, Greensboro, all that kind of stuff, Wake Forest and all those kind of towns. Asheville could be a decent town. Put some money into it and bring some jobs there that's not just retail. Opening a new store do not really help the local economy. Anybody can open a new store. And even if it's a big box store, unless it's a Costco or a Sam's Club, something like that, you're not bringing in money. You're just bringing in problems, because people think, oh, you get a new business. If you get a new business that's tech, the salaries will be a lot higher. Every city can't get a tech company to come to it. In Asheville, if a tech company came, what would people do if they're not one of those cowboys, one of those little rednecks? Because they can hunt and fish and all that kind of stuff and be happy as hell. But if you're not from that world, what are you gonna do on your time off? Get the hell out of Asheville and go to Charlotte, or hell, go to Nashville or Charlotte for the weekend, and that can be a continuing thing. But like I said, Asheville's biggest tourist attraction around Asheville is Biltmore. Biltmore, built by the Vanderbilts. Biltmore is that's the biggest attraction, and that's only a 3 or 4 hour tour. It's not like it's a Disney World or a Sea World or some place that you want to go to and make it a 3 or 4 day destination trip. It's not like that at all. Even if you had a beach, that adds an extra day to whatever trip you're going to take. And then you got yourself, what kind of food is it known for? What kind of industry does it have? Is it forestry? Is it something that pays more than minimum wage? And that's real. I think the best job they got in the whole city is to be a bartender, because you're going to have business every night. They're going to leave tips every night. So you really can't go wrong. But you're not going to have other types of businesses there. I didn't see any. And I drove around a lot. So I tried to find some great footage I tried to film some great footage of Asheville people being happy, people doing things. and outside the parks, and it's a good city for old people too. Now, old people and young people just don't mix. But Asheville, the old people can only, they would, if I would live there, I would only go in the city when I had to, but I could be in the suburbs, and there is no major airport. Don't even think about it. You're going to spend 2 days getting out of North Carolina because you got to connect somewhere. And we know how connections goes. You know, you want to go anywhere, you want to go anywhere in the United States or the world, you got to connect somewhere. And God forbid you want to go overseas, because then you got 2 or 3 connections. But it is what it is, though. This is the Old School Traveler telling you, Asheville, it's worth a few minutes, but not a few days. Peace out.